Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're going to be covering the full list of Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge. It is the entire list, so it is going to be a longer video, just so you guys know. I will put in chapters so that you can see specifically the types of monsters that you want, and so that you can see the effects of those cards if and when you desire. I'll also be making these as clips in smaller videos so you can see those specific monsters. Winged Karibo level 6 is a light attribute fairy type level 6 monster with 300 attack and 200 defense. This card is always treated as an elemental hero and a favourite card. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing one elemental hero fusion monster or one Winged Karibo from your hand face up on the field or graveyard. You can only special summon Winged Karibo level 6 once per turn this way. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, or your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, as a quick effect, you contribute this card, destroy that one monster, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. This card, it's dressed very much like a Flame Wingman and the Elemental Hero, and this, as we go into, will kind of all make sense. It being level 6 makes reasonable sense. It's Winged Karibo level 6. There are two other versions, there's a level 9 and there's also a level 10. And because this can be treated as both an elemental hero and a favourite card, it both supports those archetypes. It can only be summoned by banishing an elemental hero fusion monster, so it has to be specifically that type of card, or a Winged Karibo. Much easier to do, as Winged Karibo can be effectively brought out, it's just a weak monster. This can instantly be special summoned, and when an opponent's monster just attacks or activates a effect, you're able to instantly destroy that monster and inflict burn damage to the opponent equal to its original attack. So you're able to use instantly the Elemental Hero Flame Wingman effect, as well as cause an opponent's monster's destruction. Shining Star Dragon is a light attribute dragon type tuner officer, level 4 with 0 attack and defense. During your opponent's main phase, if this card is in your hand as a quick effect, you can target one dragon synchro monster in your graveyard, special summon this card, and if you do, special summon that monster, but negate its effects. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon one dragon synchro monster using this card you control. You can only use this effect of Shining Star Dragon once per turn. A dragon monster that was synchro summoned using this card as material cannot be destroyed by battle. So this is emphasized very much on the Crimson Dragon, as you can see the kind of design on the card. There are a few other cards that have that kind of likeness to them. It's a tuner monster, so it can be used as part of a synchro summon, and it's during your opponent's turn. If this card is in the hand, you're just able to take a dragon synchro monster in your graveyard. You are able to special summon both this card and the card that you targeted with this effect, but the only downside is that its effect is then negated. But if you can then tune using the monsters you have on the field, you can hopefully go into something like a Shooting Quasar Dragon or a Cosmic Blazar Dragon, any of those. This also provides your dragon monster that was synchro summoned using this as a material with battle protection, which isn't bad, considering many higher level monsters will have their own other versions of protection based effects. Full Armoured Utopic Ray Lancer is a water attribute beast warrior type Exceeds monster. It's a rank 4 with 2500 attack and 600 defense. It requires 3 level 4 monsters to summon it, and once per turn you can also Exceed summon a Full Armoured Utopic Ray Lancer by discarding one spell or trap card and using one rank 4 or lower Exceeds monster you control. Transfer its materials to this card. Monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack points, and at the start of the battle phase, you can negate the effects of all attack position monsters your opponent currently controls. When this attacking card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can detach one material from this card. It can make a second attack in a row. The summon condition on this card initially isn't too complicated, it just requires 3 level 4 monsters, but you could also Exceed summon this card by just discarding a spell or trap and using a rank 4 or lower Exceeds monster that you control, so you have so many varieties of cards. Any materials that go from that card actually just get transferred onto this, so you're not losing out on materials to use this effect. Monsters your opponent control lose 500 attack points, so it does have a stat reduction points to it, and At the start of the battle phase, you're just able to shut down all of your opponent's attack position monsters' effects, so that's a good way of kind of cutting them down. This is in keeping with Black Ray Lancer's effect, which pretty much did the same thing, but required its material in order to do so. If this card is successful in destroying an opponent's monster battle, this card can attack once again in a row. Now, this isn't restricted to just on monsters, it can actually also be a direct attack, provided that you've successfully destroyed a monster, it's fine. This isn't an effect that is overwhelmingly, broken, but it's a good way of kind of adding more damage to the board. Bryonic, the magical ice dragon, is a water attribute sea serpent synchro monster, level 6 with 2300 attack and 1400 defense. It requires 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. If this card is synchro summoned, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 card on the field, return it to the hand. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 card on the field, return it to the hand. You can only use each effect of the magical ice dragon once per turn. This is an alternative version to the original Bryonic, as this, I think, was in the latest kind of ice barrier structure deck, and there was also a new version of Trisha that was also in there. That was kind of an upgrade. This is pretty much the same stats, similar style of effect, but it also takes into account not only when this card is synchro summoned, but if this card is ever special summoned, considering that once it's actually been synchro summoned and actually sent to the graveyard, you can actually properly revive it, and would therefore deem it a special summon. It is also a discard cost, so you are taking a trade-off in using either of these 2 effects, but both effects do the same thing. It's just each effect is limited to once a turn, so at most you can return 2 monsters to your opponent's hand, but at the cost of 2 of your own cards for discard. Lancia, Ancestral Dragon of the Ice Mountain, is a water attribute dragon type synchro effect monster. It's a level 10 with 3300 attack and 2700 defense. It requires a water tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. Once per chain, if your opponent special summons a monster except during the damage step, you can special summon 1 ice barrier monster from your hand, deck, extra deck, or graveyard. Then you can change 1 attack position monster your opponent controls to defense position. You can only use this effect of Lancia, Ancestral Dragon of the Ice Mountain, twice per turn. If this face-up synchro summoned card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon 1 ice barrier synchro monster from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon. This card is very good for the deck and actually greatly improves how the strategy works. It does require a specific water tuner monster, and so you have to run it in quite a specific style of deck, but the non-tuners are generic. And it just activates per chain, so if your opponent activates something as part of a chain, you're instantly able to special summon an ice barrier monster that can come from your hand, deck, extra deck, or graveyard. Keeping in mind that extra deck is that key word in there, because you're able to get the other extra deck monsters out there who can then use their effects. For example, Trishula can banish cards, and Bryonic is able to return monsters back to the hand. So if he targets an extra deck monster, that actually goes back to their extra deck, which mitigates the level of resources they've had to use to bring that monster out in the first place. You're then able to take an attack position monster your opponent controls and switch it to defense position. That's actually perfect because it will then stop it from attacking for the rest of that turn, especially if it's just been summoned. This isn't either an issue either, as if this card happens to be leaving the field because of an opponent's card, you're able to instantly just bring out another Ice Barrier Synchro monster from the extra deck. Since it's considered also a Synchro summon, it means it will instantly get access to their effects. Georgius, Swordsman of the Ice Barrier, is a water attribute winged beast tuner effect monster. It's a level 6 with 2000 attack and 1200 defense. While you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters in the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects of Georgius, Swordsman of the Ice Barrier, once per turn. If you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon one at level 5 or lower Ice Barrier monster from your hand or graveyard. Most of the ice barriers have their own types of limitations to whatever your opponent can do, whether that be restricting the number of spell or trap cards they can play, the number of monsters they have, the number of attacks they can make, even actually making an attack on a monster. If you've got the Fox one out, I think the tuner has a restriction on that one as well, even negating effects. This one has the ability to just shut down any abilities from your opponent's graveyard of any monsters, so that in itself is a mini Necro Valley style of effect. The other ability of this card happens to be you're just instantly able to special summon this card and then revive a level 5 or lower ice barrier, be that from the hand or the graveyard. The downside of this is, since it's summoned in defense position, it is going to have the weakest stat lineup for it, but since it's also tuner, maybe within the same turn you might want to go for a synchro play. Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier is a water attribute aqua type tuner effect monster. It's a level 2 with 1000 attack and 400 defense. You contribute one other effect monster, special them up to 3 Ice Barrier tokens. They're at water level 1 with 0 attack and defense, and if you do, increase this card's level by that number. Also, you cannot special summon from the edge deck for the rest of this turn except water synchro monsters. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one of your Ice Barrier cards that is banished or in your deck to your hand, except Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier. You can only use each effect of Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier once per turn. This is one of the perfect types of tuners, as it has its own way of bringing out various cards without much effort. Just by tributing another effect monster, you can bring out up to 3 Ice Barrier tokens. These being level 1 means if you tune that alongside those, you can bring out a level 5 water synchro monster. Bear in mind it does lock you into that, but it's better that it locks you into that than for it to lock you purely into ice barriers, as you could splash this into other styles of decks. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you're just instantly able to search for an ice barrier that happens to be banished, or from the deck to the hand, which can be useful for you later on. Frozen Domain of the Ice Barrier is a continuous trap card. Your opponent can activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your Ice Barrier monster effects. If a monster is special summoned from the edge deck except during the damage step, you can return it to the hand or shuffle into the deck one Ice Barrier monster you control. Then you can place one card from the field or either graveyard on the bottom of the deck. You can only use this effect of Frozen Domain of the Ice Barrier once per turn. Once per turn during your end phase, reveal 3 Ice Barrier monsters with different names in your extra deck, or destroy this card. So this card is supposed to be supporting the Ice Barrier cards and the monsters themselves. Your opponent just cannot activate cards or effects in response to Ice Barrier monster activations. That's perfect, as a lot of them have to activate in order for you to successfully do something. This gives them kind of the ability to protect themselves when activating their effects. And if a monster is special summoned from the edge deck, you can return it to the hand or shuffle into the deck just one Ice Barrier monster you control. You're then able to take a card from the field or either graveyard and place it on the bottom of the deck. That can be useful if your opponent has a particular strategy, or you know that they've kind of sent something already to the graveyard in hope to use it later within the turn or within the duel. It makes it more difficult for them to then reach that card without having to specifically search for it. This has a downside in that you have to reveal 3 Ice Barrier monsters with different names in the extra deck to keep this card on the field, but you've got more than those, so unless your opponent is running one of those style of decks that actually rips apart your extra deck, you should be in a fine situation. This is not likely to have to kind of self-destruct. Arms of Genix Return 0 is a Dart Attribute Machine type Synchro level 10 with 3100 attack and 2950 defense. It requires a Dart tuner monster and one or more non-tuner monsters. When your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect, you can banish one monster from your graveyard with the same attribute, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. You can only banish each attribute once per turn to activate this effect of Arms of Genix Return 0. Once per turn, you can target up to 6 of your Genix monsters with different attributes that are banished and or in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, then you can destroy up to that many cards in the spell and trap zones. This is quite a decent card for them. It is requiring quite a bit of setup, as you do need the various monsters to make a level 10 monster. I know that some of the GNX cards are level 3 or level 4. You do have some of the synchro monsters which are 5, 6, and 7. So they can actually make this card not too badly, but it does require quite an investment. As soon as your opponent activates a monster effect, just by banishing a monster from the graveyard, so long as it's got the same attribute, you just get to negate and destroy that monster. Bear in mind that I think a lot of the GX cards have their own attributes. It's one of those types of decks, similar to Yangzin, that have a monster for each attribute, so meeting that requirement isn't a problem. It also means that each turn you can just return your GX monsters with different attributes that are banished or in the graveyard into the deck. So by resetting them, hopefully you can then send them back to the graveyard to banish them to retry for this card's first effect, and then just destroy up to that many cards in the opponent's spell and trap zones. This can be useful as a way of wiping out your opponent's cards, but then again, it doesn't negate them, so if your opponent is able to activate anything, they'll just use that and you'll have wasted this effect. Repair GNX Controller is a Dart Attribute Machine type Link effect monster. It's got 1200 attack and it's a Link 1. It requires a 1 level 4 or lower GNX monster. You can only special summon and repair a GNX Controller once per turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can add 1 GNX monster from your graveyard to your hand. Once per chain, if a GNX monster is added to your hand except by drawing it, you can accept during a damage step. Immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 GNX monster. Also, you cannot special from the edge deck for the rest of this turn, except synchro summon using a GNX tuner as material. The requirement on this card is a level 4 or lower GNX monsters. There's plenty of them, so it's not a restriction. As soon as this card is kind of Link summoned, you can add a GNX monster from the graveyard back to the hand, so there is some form of recovery. And if that happens, then you're able to immediately normal summon that GNX monster. You are locked into only being able to synchro summon, and specifically only those synchro monsters that require a GNX tuner as material, but it's a good way of adding consistency to the deck without making it, access all synchro monsters. Our GNX Undyne is a water attribute aqua type level 4 with 1700 attack and 1100 defense. Once per turn, you can banish 1 GNX monster from your graveyard. This card gains that monster's attribute. Then, if you banished a tuner to activate this effect, you can treat this card as a tuner until the end of this turn. If you control a GNX Synchro monster, you can target 2 GNX monsters in your graveyard, including this card, add them to your hand. Also, for the rest of this turn, any card sent to your graveyard is banished instead. So there's a lot to unpack with this card. Firstly, 1700 for a level 4 monster isn't bad. A lot of the GNX monsters can be quite weak. And just by banishing a GNX monster, you're able to take that monster's attributes. Useful for going into various synchro monsters, as they get their effects based on the attributes that are used to summon them. So you might want to kind of fixate on a particular attribute to get the desired effect for that moment in time. If you happen to have banished a tuner to use this effect, this card is also treated as a tuner for the rest of the turn, so it means that you can actually go into that synchro play a lot easier. It happens to also mean that you can target 2 GNX monsters in your graveyard, so long as you've got the GNX Synchro monster, and including this card, and add them to your hand, which helps to support the recovery as you use a lot of resources. It does also mean that the downside is any cards that for the rest of the turn get banished rather than being sent to the graveyard, making it more difficult to recover those cards. Our GNX Turing is a Dart Attribute Spellcaster type tuner effect monster. It's a level 2 with 600 attack and defense. During your opponent's main phase, if you control a GNX monster, as a quick effect you can special summon this card from your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon 1 GNX Synchro monster. You can only use this effect of GNX tuning once per turn. This card on the field can be treated as a level 1 or 3 monster when used for a synchro summon of a GNX Synchro monster. The purpose of this card is it's effectively a tuner which helps to bring out a variety of different synchro monsters. It can activate, provided you have a Genix monster on your field. You can just special summon this card and then instantly synchro summon on your opponent's turn. So it's very similar to kind of like an Excel synchro. It also being able to manipulate its levels between 1, 2, and 3 means, depending on your situation, you can go into your desired synchro monster. This is quite similar to a couple of other cards. I mean, even, for example, within Speedroids, they can actually modularize their levels in such a way as to kind of go into the various synchro monsters. There are other examples out there that can do very similar things. If you think of the shark cards, a lot of them are able to adapt their levels between 3, 4, and 5 to go into rank 3, 4, or 5 monsters. Infernoid Evil is a fire attribute fiend type fusion effect monster. It's a level 1 with 1100 attack and 1100 defense. It requires 2 Infernoid monsters, and if this card is fusion summoned, you can banish 1 Infernoid monster from your graveyard, send Infernoid monsters with different names from your deck to the graveyard, equal to the banished monster's level. If this card is sent to the graveyard or banished, you can add 1 Void spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Infernoid Evil once per turn. This card is useful for kind of setting up for your Infernoid plays, as they do summon themselves from the graveyard. And simply by banishing an Infernoid monster from the graveyard, you're just able to refuel your graveyard by sending Infernoid monsters equal to the banished monster's level. So the higher the monster you banish, the more monsters you can actually send to that graveyard. The summoning requirement on this card isn't difficult, as it just needs 2 generic Infernoid monsters. You'll be running pretty much at least 1 or 2 copies of each, and it doesn't have to be either same name or different names. It can be a combination of either. And if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished, you're just able to search for a Void spell or trap card straight from the deck to the hand, so it adds the consistency to the deck. Infernoid Flood is a fire attribute fiend type link monster. It's a rank 4 with 3000 attack points. It requires 2+ monsters, including an Infernoid monster. When your opponent would special summon a monster as a quick effect, you contribute 1 monster, negate the summon, and if you do, banish that monster. If a card is banished from your graveyard except during a damage step, you can banish 1 card on the field. If this linked summoned card in its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can special 1 Infernoid monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only use each effect of Infernoid Flood once per turn. The summoning on this is not too tricky. As long as you've got at least 1 Infernoid monster, you can actually bring this out, but it does require usually the 4 monsters to summon it. As soon as your opponent special summons a monster, you're just able to tribute a monster and not only negate the summon, but banish that monster, so it doesn't even get to use its effect if it has one. Also, you're able to banish a card on the field if a card happens to be banished from your graveyard, which is very common within the Infernoids. Once this link summon card simply leaves the field because it's destroyed by an opponent's card, whether that be by card effect or by battle destruction, you're just able to bring out any Infernoid monster, and you can just ignore its summoning conditions. Void Reignition is a normal spell card. Its effect is to reveal 1 Inferno monster or 1 Void spell or trap card in your hand, discard your entire hand, then draw the same number of cards you discarded. If you control no monsters or all monsters you control are fiend monsters, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target up to 11 of your banished Inferno monsters with different names, return them to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Void Reignition once per duel. This card's effect just requires you to reveal an Infernoid monster or a Void spell or trap card. You're then able to discard your entire hand and draw the same number of cards, so actually if you need to refresh your hand, that's an option you can use. And you're just drawing the same number of cards. Think of it a bit like a magical mallet, but for the Infernoid archetype. If you have no monsters or all monsters you control are fiend monsters, that's pretty much the only typing that Infernoid monsters have, provided it's not on the same turn that this card was sent to the graveyard. Just by banishing this card, I don't know why they're looking at the 11 targets of banished Infernoids and recovering those cards back to the graveyard. I'm guessing that might be the total number of different named ones that you can currently have. This is only able to be used once per duel, so you should only ever consider running one of this card. Void Breach is a continuous spell card. The effect is Inferno monsters you control gain 100 attack for each of your banished Inferno monsters. If you control no monsters or all monsters you control are Fiend monsters, you can activate one of these effects. Add one of your banished Inferno monsters to your hand, or special summon one Inferno monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only use this effect of Void Breach once per turn. So with this, your Inferno monsters get a stat boost for each of your banished Inferno monsters, so the more you've got, actually the more powerful they become. And if you control no monsters or all monsters are Fiend types, so that's again very similar to Infernoids, you're either able to recover one of your banished Inferno monsters back to the hand, or you're able to just special summon an Inferno monster from your hand, and it's regardless of its summoning conditions, making it very easy to bring out some of your bigger threats. Spiritual Beast Tamer Lara is a light attribute psychic type level 1 with 100 attack and a 2000 defense. You can only special summon a Spiritual Beast Tamer Lara once per turn. You can discard this card immediately after this resolves, normal summon one Ritual Beast monster from your hand. If a Ritual Beast card you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard instead. If this card is banished, you can special summon one Ritual Beast monster from your deck, except Spiritual Beast Tamer Lara. You can only use each effect of Spiritual Beast Tamer Lara once per turn. This card is actually very useful for the deck, as you, just by discarding this card, can instantly normal summon a Ritual monster from the hand, and if a Ritual Beast you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, just by banishing this card, it substitutes the destruction for itself. If this card happens to be banished, so even from that previous effect, you're just able to special summon a Ritual Beast monster from the deck, and that will be the one that you need for that particular moment. Ritual Beast Ulti Nochi Drago is a light attribute worm type fusion at level 7 with 2400 attack and 1900 defense. It requires a Ritual Beast Tamer monster and a Spiritual Beast monster, and must be special summoned from your X deck by banishing the cards from your field and or graveyard. You can only special summon Ritual Beast Ulti Nochu Drago once per turn. Your opponent cannot target other Ritual Beast monsters you control with card effects. As a quick effect, you can return this card to the X deck, then target one of your banished Ritual Beast monsters, special summon it, but it cannot attack directly. The way that the Ritual Beasts like to work is they like to tag out each other, very similar to the Gladiator Beasts. In other words, with this card, because it's able to tag itself out when your opponent threatens one of your monsters, for any sort of effect, you just return this back to the Etch deck and take one of your other Ritual Beast monsters and bring that back onto the field. It does limit it from being able to attack directly during the turn, but it means that you can actually dodge your opponent's card effects that are targeting this card. The summoning condition is also pretty simple, as you'll be running both Ritual Beast Tamers as well as Spiritual Beast monsters, and each can integrate with each other very well. Ritual Beast Ulti Rare Rutari is a wind attribute psychic type link effect monster. It's a link 4 with 2600 attack points and requires 3+ effect monsters. Neither player can contribute cards to activate the card or effect. You can only use each of the following effects of Ritual Beast Ulti Rare Rutari once per turn. You can target one of your banished Ritual Beast cards, return it to the hand or Etch deck, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one Ritual Beast monster from your hand. During your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can target one Ritual Beast card you control, and one card your opponent controls, banish them. So this card does require 4 cards in order to summon it. It can be a little bit tricky and a high investment, but it does restrict both players from triplicate cards to activate a card or effect, so it is a way of mitigating certain cards from activating, be that monsters, spell or trap cards. Once per turn, just by targeting one of your banished Ritual Beast cards, you're able to return it either to the hand or the extra deck, so that's going to refuel your hand or the extra deck in order for you to bring out those monsters again. And once this card has used that effect, you're just instantly able to summon a Ritual Beast monster from your hand. And during the opponent's turn, just by targeting a Ritual Beast card you have, and a card your opponent controls, you banish them. Ritual Beast monsters can be easily accessed from the banish pile, whereas I highly doubt that a lot of what your opponent is running will be able to do the same. Ritual Beast Inheritance is a continuous spell card. The effect is monsters your opponent controls lose 200 attack for each different type among the Ritual Beast monsters you control. You can only use each of the following effects of Ritual Beast Inheritance once per turn. You can reveal one Ritual Beast monster in your hand, add one Ritual Beast monster with a different type from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. If 2 or more monsters are special summoned to your field at the same time, except during a damage step, you can target one monster on the field and change its battle position. So with this card, it can reduce your opponent's attack points for each different type of Ritual Beast you've got. I think you've got quite a variety there, so you can get at least 400 or so attack points off your opponent's monsters. And technically, this card can actually stack up, so if you had maybe all 3 of these on the field, and you had more monsters of different typings, you could have your opponent be losing over 1,000 attack points each monster. This card also means that you can reveal a Ritual Beast monster in your hand and just add a Ritual Beast monster with a different type, so it adds consistency and drawing into what you need as and when you need it. The other side of it is you have to then discard a card, so there is a cost to that, but you will be discarding whatever is not necessary for the time. If 2 or more monsters are special summoned to your field at the same time, they can do that because often you can get both the Spiritual Beast and the Ritual Beast out at the same point, as there are multiple effects that kind of integrate those effects together. You're just able to switch the battle position of a monster, be that yours or your opponent's. Toy Soldier is a light attribute warrior type level 4 with 1500 attack and 1000 defense. You can set this card from your hand to your spell and trap zone as a spell card. You can only use each of the following effects of Toy Soldier once per turn. If this set card in the spell and trap zone is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Toy Box from your deck to your hand, or if you control Toy Box, you can add one level 4 light monster instead. So this is part of a variety of different archetypes. There are different monsters that are able to set themselves kind of to the spell and trap zone. There are alternative monsters that can do that. For example, Silver Sentinel can do that. You also have Toy Magician, which I think is part of this toy archetype, and is probably one of the most, it's one of the newest members that you can rely on. This card is able to, if this is sent to the graveyard, so you can actually either send it yourself or your opponent can send it by actually targeting it, just special summon this card straight away, so you can actually waste one of your opponent's resources. And if this card happens to be normal or special summoned, you're just instantly able to bring out either the Toy Box, or if you already have a Toy Box on your field, just a level 4 light attribute monster instead, so you do have that flexibility. Toy Tank is a light attribute machine type level 4 with 1000 attack and 2100 defense. You can set this card from your hand to your spell and trap zone as a spell. You can only use each of the following effects of Toy Tank once per turn. If the set card in the spell and trap zone is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can attribute this monster to special summon one level 6 or lower monster from your hand, or if you control Toy Box, you can special summon one level 6 or lower monster from your graveyard instead, except Toy Tank. This, like the previous monster, the Toy Soldier, is able to set itself instantly to the spell and trap zone. And if this sent card is sent to the graveyard, you're able to just special summon this card. By attributing this monster, you can bring out a level 6 or lower monster from your hand. But if you also have the Toy Box on the field, you can opt to special summon a level 6 or lower monster from the graveyard instead. So if you have Toy Box on the field, you're able to get both options, whichever you prefer. It's not a particularly powerful card as it has 2100 defense, so it's a good defense monster, but it has no offense really to it. Toy Box is a continuous spell card. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send one face-down card you control to the graveyard, destroy that opponent's monster. Once per turn, you can activate one of these effects. From your hand, deck, face-up monster zone, and or graveyard, choose up to 2 monsters with toy in their original names that can set themselves from the hand as a spell and set them in your spell and trap zone as spells. The other effect is destroy up to 2 cards in your spell and trap zone. So this is the card that ties the deck together. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you're just able to take a face-down card you control to the graveyard and destroy that monster. And if you happen to have sent any toy monsters to the graveyard to activate this effect, that triggers off their effect that recovers them, and then triggers off an additional effect from that to search for another card. You're able to, with its initial effect, also set 2 monsters with toy from the hand deck face up in the monster zone or the graveyard, so that's effectively most places outside of the banishment, and they can be used. And then you also have the option of destroying up to 2 cards in your spell and trap zones. With this effect, you're able to then re-trigger those effects, continuing with the amount of advantage you get. Electro Blaster is a fire attribute machine at type level 4 with 1800 attack and 1400 defense. If you normal or special summon a fire monster, except during a damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can send one level 8 pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Electro Blaster once per turn. Once per turn, if a spell card is activated except during a damage step, you can make all fire monsters you currently control gain 300 attack points. My confusion with this card is actually what does it work with? I can think of Volcanics as an example, as it does react with fire attribute monsters, and they do have a couple of level 8 monsters, so that would make sense. If you're considering the fact if you normal or special summon a fire monster, so that's fine, it's either way, you're just instantly able to special summon this card. You're then pitching a level 8 pyro monster, so that would make sense to pitch the Volcanic Emperor, as that card can actually revive itself from the graveyard. And also, if a spell is activated, which you do have quite a few of those with the Blaze Accelerator cards, most of those Accelerator cards, except for the Trap one, can trigger off this effect, and then all your fire monsters gain an additional 300 attack points. If you guys know of any other decks that kind of work with this, I think Fire Kings could work, as they have their level 8 monster. I think as well Snake Eyes is another example where this would work. Division is a fire attribute machine type level 2 with 200 attack and defense. You contribute all face-up divisions you control, special summon up to twice that many machine tokens, machine fire level 1 with 200 attack and defense, and each time one is destroyed, your opponent takes 500 damage. If this card is banished, you can target any number of tokens you control, destroy them. You can only use each effect of division once per turn. The purpose of this card is to do as much burn damage to the opponent as possible, and by just tributing all face-up divisions that you have, you can special summon up to twice that many tokens. This means that if you've got 3 divisions and you tribute all of them, you can have an entire field's worth of these tokens, but that means 500 points of damage each. That's 2,500 points of damage. And if this card happens to have been banished, then you're able to just trigger off the destruction of your tokens instead, rather than relying on your opponent. It's okay as an effect, but I would probably use those tokens more towards a link summon of a link monster or a synchro monster, rather than just for burn damage. You sometimes have to think further ahead than just the immediate potential you can do with this burn effect damage. Oil is a normal spell card. Target up to 2 level 4 or lower fire monsters with different names in your graveyard, add them to your hand. You can only activate 1 oil per turn. There is another card which it works quite similar to this. It's called Fire Recovery, and it basically does the same thing, except I think you can also draw an additional card when that card's in the graveyard by banishing it, so that's actually better than this one is. But if you just want it for a simple effect, this can be run in any of those types of fire attribute decks. So I'm thinking anything from your boxes, to your Snake Eyes, to your Infernoble monsters, to the Volcanics, and there are probably a whole list of other cards that can actually work and integrate with this, as it requires the entire attribute of fire rather than just the pyro type. It is restricted as well to only level 4 or lower monsters. But I also think of it a bit like that Dark Factory of Mass Production. That card recovers 2 monsters, but they're restricted to only being normal types. Ebon's Sun is a continuous spell card. If a face-up monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can gain life points equal to their combined original attack. If a monster is special summoned face-up from your graveyard except during a damage step, you can target one of them, it gains 1000 attack. If a spell or trap is discarded from your hand to the graveyard except during a damage step, you can target one of them, add it to your hand. You can only use each effect of Ebon's Sun once per turn. This is one of those strange interaction-based cards which I've never seen before, and it has multiple effects depending on the circumstances that you face. With the first effect, just if a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you gain those life points back. That is a way of protecting your life points. If a monster is special summoned face up from your graveyard, you're able to boost its attack points by 1000 points, so that is quite decent for actually getting over some of your opponent's higher attack monsters. And if a spell or trap is discarded from your hand to the graveyard, that's sometimes used as part of a cost. You're able to recover one of them back to the hand. It's a way of adding to your consistency and often mitigating the cost that you would normally incur with various monster and spell and trap effects. Red Lotus King Flame Crime is a fire attribute fiend type level 3 with 1700 attack and 300 defense. During the main phase, if you control a fiend tuner or your opponent controls a special summoned monster, as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can inflict 400 damage to your opponent for each fire monster you control with different names. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send one normal trap from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Red Lotus King Flame Crime once per turn. As soon as I've seen this card, I was instantly thinking it's a Jack Atlas card. It works perfectly with his Resonator archetype, considering all of his Resonators are fiend-based tuners. This enables you to go into your synchro plays a lot quicker. It can also special summon itself if your opponent has a special summoned monster on the field. And in doing so, you can instantly inflict 400 damage to your opponent, times the number of fire monsters you currently have on the field with different names. So if you have maybe 4 or 5 of those, you can do the maximum amount of damage of about 2000 life points to your opponent. And when this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, just by sending a normal trap from the deck to the graveyard, hopefully it has a secondary effect which works within the graveyard. I'm thinking of things like Breakthrough Skill, which can actually trigger off their effect by banishing themselves. There are probably other examples. If you know of any, put those in the comments down below. Synchro Creed is a normal spell card. If a synchro monster is on the field, draw 1 card. Then if 3 or more synchro monsters are on the field, you can draw 1 more card. You can only activate 1 Synchro Creed per turn. This is a draw card as though for the various synchro monsters you have on yours and your opponent's field, as it applies to both. If you only have a synchro monster on the field, you just draw once. But if 3 or more synchro monsters are on the field, then you can draw 2 cards instead of the 1. This considers both yours and your opponent's field, and it makes sense even from the artwork. The monsters that you have there are 3 of the Naturia Beast ones. There is the one that negates effects, monster effects. There is one that negates the trap cards, and there is one which is just a generic one. It's their highest attack monster, but it has no effect to it. This card would be useful in something like a Stardust-based deck, or even a Red Dragon Archfiend deck, or Black Rose Dragon would also work with this. Gathering Light is a continuous spell card. You can banish 1 monster you control and 1 synchro monster in your graveyard. That is a Power Tool monster or level 7 or 8 dragon monster. Then target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. Level 7 or higher synchro monsters you control gain 400 attack for each of your banished level 7 or higher synchro monsters. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, while you have a banished synchro monster, you can negate the attack. This is quite an unusual card just by banishing a monster you control, and a synchro monster in the graveyard it has to be a power tool dragon, or it has to be a level 7 or 8 dragon monster. You can destroy one of your opponent's cards, be that a spell, a trap, or a monster. If a level 7 or higher synchro monster you control gains 400 attack for each of your banished level 7 or higher synchro monsters, provided with the first effect you should have at least 2 of those that are banished. The more you've got, the more attack points those monsters have, and they're each applying with that effect. If you've got multiple of them, and you've got, say, even just the 2 basic ones, that's an extra 800 points boost. And each turn you're able to just negate the first attack that you need to. And the nice thing about it is it's a little bit different to Cyber Barrier Dragon. With Cyber Barrier Dragon, that card can only negate the first attack that your opponent declares. This determines you have full choice of when you use this effect. Earthbound Resonance is a continuous trap card. The effect is if a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is destroyed by a card effect, except during a damage step, you can target one of them. Each player takes damage equal to half its attack. When your Dark Synchro monster special summoned from the extra deck is targeted for an attack, you can target one card on the field to destroy it. You can only use each effect of Earthbound Resonance once per turn. When I first saw this, I just referenced the Earthbound Immortals instantly from this. It happens to be when a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is destroyed by a card effect. You're just able to inflict burn damage to your opponent and to yourself equal to half of its attack, so your opponent isn't likely to try and trigger this type of effect off. And provided it's a Dark Synchro monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, has been targeted for an attack, you're instantly able to destroy a card on the field, be that a spell, a trap, or a monster, and it can be on yours or your opponent's field. Electrode Beast Cation is a light attribute Thunder type, level 2 with 300 attack and 100 defense. If this card is normal summoned, you can add one Electrode Beast Anion from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one level 4 or lower Thunder monster. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, except light Xyz monsters. You can target one other Thunder monster you control that has a level. This card's level becomes that monster's until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Electrode Beast Cation once per turn. This card's purpose is to go for effectively a 1 turn 1 card Xyz summon. It can copy the level of another monster you have that is a light, which is a Thunder type monster. That means you do have more variety than going into just a rank 2 play, but even within that you've got the sprite monsters that work well with this, and you're instantly able to bring out the Electrode Beast Anion from your deck or graveyard back to the hand, as well as conducting an additional normal summon. Electrode Beast Anion is a light attribute Thunder type level 2 with 300 attack and 100 defense. If this card is normal summoned, you can make this card a level 4. Then you can add one Spirit Converter from your deck or graveyard to your hand. You can target one other card you control, send both it and this card to the graveyard, and if you do, draw one card. You can only use each effect of Electrode Beast Anion once per turn. When this card is just normal summoned, you're able to instantly make this a level 4. That means you can go into a rank 4 Xyz play instantly. You're then able to just search for a Spirit Converter from the deck or graveyard back to the hand, and you're able to send both this and another card to the graveyard in exchange to draw one card depending on the situation you're in. Sacrifice Level Up is a normal spell card. Target one Xyz monster you control, banish 2 materials from it, and if you do, special summon one Xyz monster from its deck whose rank is 1 higher than that monster, but it cannot attack this turn. You can only activate one Sacrifice Level Up per turn. The purpose of this card is it does allow you to go into a higher rank monster without really too much cost. A lot of the other cards only allow you to go into certain ranks, and they're usually stuck to basically their typing or their attribute, or they have to be kind of a similar naming. For example, with the Chronomalies, they pretty much have to be along the Chronomaly line. Similarly, with the Gimmick Puppets, they tend to be quite restricted as of themselves. often it's a case of you're locked into the archetype. Even with things such as Heritage Force, which was their version for the Arclight Brothers to use, it was quite decent. This card is a bit like Rank Up Astral Force, but worse. That ranks up those monsters by 2 ranks. This is only by 1 rank, and it requires you to get rid of 2 of its materials. Unless it's a monster that happened to have had 3 materials on it, you're bringing out a monster that is not going to have an effect unless it has an automated effect when it's summoned. It would have been nice if this card had allowed you to attach this card as, a material towards it, but otherwise you're just using a vanilla style of monster from this effect. White Circle Reef is a normal spell card. Target 1 fish monster you control, destroy that fish monster, and if you do, add 1 monster with the same name it had on the field from your deck to your hand, or if you controlled a fish synchro monster, when you activated this card, you can special summon it instead. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 2 fish monsters with the same name in your graveyard, place one of the 2 on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, special summon the other. You can only use each effect of White Circle Reef once per turn. This card confuses me a bit as to why it's somewhat beneficial, as unless you've somewhat negated the effect of your fish monster that you have on the field and you actually want the effect of the card, that's why you consider replacing one for the other. But otherwise, it's just very unusual. It's quite bizarre. You also have to have a fish synchro monster on the field for you to special summon the monster, which means even more investment within the deck. By banishing this card, you can take 2 fish monsters with the same name in your graveyard. One gets shoved back onto the bottom of the deck, and the other one you get to have the option of special summoning. That one that ends up on the bottom of the deck is unlikely to be recovered unless you've got specific search cards, or you're able to shuffle your deck so many times as for it not to be a problem. Arbitration of White is a continuous trap card. You can target 1 fish monster you control. It is treated as a tuner this turn. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can discard 1 fish monster, change all monsters your opponent controls to defense position. If your fish monster is destroyed by battle or sent to the graveyard, you can send this face-up card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, special summon 1 fish monster from your graveyard. You can only use each effect of Arbitration of White once per turn. First part of the effect just lets you take a fish monster you control and treat it as a tuner for the turn. This can be useful as you've got various monsters within the deck, and if you haven't got any tuners on you and you've got monsters that are non-tuners, it would be a good way for you to synchro summon into your other monsters. As soon as an opponent's monster declares an attack, just by discarding a fish monster, you're able to change all of your opponent's monsters to defense position. This can be useful as a way of protecting your monsters to a point where you can actually synchro summon into something strong enough to get over their threats. And if your fish monster is destroyed by battle or sent to the graveyard, simply by sending this card from your face-up spell and trap zone, you're able to special summon a fish monster from your graveyard, so there are multiple ways of getting advantage through this card. Synchro Panic is a continuous trap card. The effect is to activate only if a face-up synchro monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect. By targeting one of them, special summon 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuners from your graveyard, whose total levels equal the targeted monsters, and if you do, they cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects this turn. Neither player can synchro summon. Destroy this card during your 3rd standby phase after activation. This card is very much quite an unusual one. By activating this card, so as you've got a synchro monster that was destroyed by battle or card effect, you can take one of them, special summon a tuner and 1 or more non-tuners from the graveyard whose total levels equal the targeted monsters. Okay, so it's a little bit like desynchro, which is used, but this works in retaliation to your synchro monster being destroyed, as opposed to just actually splitting apart your synchro monster, which is how desynchro works. They are protected from being destroyed by battle or card effects during the turn, so it's a good way of protecting those cards and then maybe using them for other purposes. But it does limit you from synchro summoning, and this restriction lasts for 3 turns after its activation. During this card, destroy this card during your third standby phase after activation. So it's a hard restriction to synchros. Mirror Match is a fire attribute spellcaster level 1 with 0 attack and defense. If this card is in your hand, you can reveal 3 cards with different names from your hand and or deck that match the names of 3 different cards in your opponent's graveyard. And if you do, special summon this card. When your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can send this card summoned by its previous effect to the graveyard, send one card with the same name as that opponent's card from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, negate the activation. You can only use each effect of Mirror Match once per turn. I get the pun, it's like mirror match, you know, it's a female character, very clever. They have sometimes these kind of fun naming systems attached to them. First part of the effect, it has to be revealing 3 cards with different names from the hand or deck that match the names of 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard. Now, this requires you to have a very similar style of deck and can really only work on the hand trap types of cards. It's anything that's very generic, so Call by the Grave, Effect Veil, so Snowlet, the Cherry Blossom card, any of those style of cards, Lockbird, another example, DD Crow, this would have the ability to kind of negate and shut down those types of effects. But it's so specific, the likelihood of you managing to do this and for your opponent to have gone through exactly 3 cards that are from their deck that is gone to the graveyard that you have in your deck is highly unlikely. There's no point in even wasting your time on even looking at this card. That's my personal opinion of it. Ace Spades Speculation is a light attribute warrior type fusion effect monster. It's a level 7 with 2500 attack, 2500 defense. It requires a monster with 2500 or more attack and 1 face down defense position monster with 2500 or less defense. You can only special summon Ace Spades Speculation once per turn. You contribute 1 attack position monster and 1 face down defense position monster to special summon this card from your graveyard. This card gains the following effects based on its battle position. If it's in attack position, it gains attack equal to the highest original attack among monsters your opponent controls, your choice if tied. In defense position, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. The summoning requirement on this card is one where technically you could use some sort of super polymerization for it, but it is, as you can use it on like a face down defense position monster, but it is quite an unusual requirement. I've never seen anything quite like it. This card can only be summoned once per turn, which is fine. It's not really, you wouldn't be running more than one of these. And by tributing an attack position monster and a face down defense position monster, you're just instantly able to recover this card from your graveyard. If it's in attack position, this takes on the attack points of the highest attack monster your opponent controls, so you can actually always make this card kind of the biggest threat. It's a bit like the Wicked Avatar always has 100 attack points more than the monster on the field that has the highest attack currently. With the defense position, it keeps it in a defense mode and keeps the protection in that it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. So it's a good way of stalling over various cards so long as you need, extra time to draw into what you require. Overall, I think the card is quite unique and it's quite a specific fusion monster. I don't see too many people looking to play it, but it'd be interesting if someone actually playtests this and sees what it can do. Wonky Quartet is an Earth attribute beast type, exceeds rank 4 with 0 attack and 2600 defense. It requires 2 or more level 4 monsters. It's unaffected by other card effects if this card is exceed summoned. Also, once per turn during your standby phase, attach the top 3 cards of your deck to this card as material, then apply the following effect based on the number of monsters attached to this card. 4 or less, give control of this card to your opponent. 5 or more, take 400 damage for each material this card has, and if you do, destroy all monsters you control. I don't actually understand what the benefit of this card is. It's really strange. Firstly, it has decent defense points. 2600 isn't bad. Its summoning conditions aren't too difficult either, as you need just 2 or more level 4 monsters. It's unaffected by other card effects. That's usually a good thing, but in this card, maybe not so much. And as soon as this card is exceed summoned, during this, or also once during the standby phase, you're able to attach the top 3 cards of your deck to this card as material. If you happen to have 4 or less, this card goes straight to the opponent. And if it has 5 or more, you take 400 damage for each material this card has. And if you do, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. So I'm guessing you want to give this over to the opponent and then to have them attach more materials onto this card so that they can take, effectively 2,000 plus points of life point damage, and it self-destructs all of their monsters. Meeting this condition it's just so bizarre. It's a weird one, and it's going to be one of those types of rogue strategies. Maybe some will break it, but it's a heavy investment into a very rogue deck that's not likely to work. Life Hack is a quick play spell card. The effect is to target one face-up monster on the field. Any damage your opponent takes this turn is halved. Also, that monster's attack becomes equal to your opponent's current life points until the end of this turn. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Then target one face-up monster on the field. Any damage your opponent takes this turn is halved. Also, that monster's attack becomes equal to your current life points until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Life Hack once per turn. This is another one of those very weirdly designed cards. So, okay, you take a face-up monster on the field. Any damage your opponent takes is halved, so that's a bad thing. Also, that monster's attack becomes equal to your opponent's current life points. So you can take one of your monsters and then say, for example, your opponent has 8,000 life points. It's just the start of the duel. You could actually make your monster's attack points 8,000. That's a good way of getting over your opponent and their biggest threat monsters. But in exchange, you're doing half the amount of damage. It's a fine exchange. It's not that big of a problem. And actually, sometimes getting over certain monsters is sometimes the easiest way through these types of effects. If you think of cards such as that Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon or any of these other cards which are unaffected by card effects, many of them have no battle protection effects. They're just purely from the unaffected by other card effects. Therefore, if you can get your particular monster to over that monster's attack points, you're more likely to just get over their biggest threats with a very simple 2-card combination. This card, when it's banished from your graveyard, you can take a face-up monster on the field. Your opponent also takes half the damage that turn, and that monster's attack becomes equal to your current life points until the end of this turn. So it actually takes you away from your opponent's life points and reflects it actually onto your life points. This effect can really be used twice. Bunch of Beast Bodies is a normal trap card. Change all monsters that were not normal or special summoned this turn to defense position. For the rest of this turn, a player who controls a defense position monster cannot declare attacks with monsters that were normal or special summoned this turn. The purpose of this card is, if you already have an established board that your opponent has, then they're punished and all of those monsters are changed to defense position, and anything you summoned fresh on your turn is unaffected by this effect. Bear in mind that all of your monsters will have to have been summoned fresh in the turn in order for you to actually declare any attacks in the same turn. It's very gimmicky and it might work in 1 or 2 situations. For example, if your opponent's kind of clear-boarded all of your field the previous turn, and you only really have the choice of, going into fresh monsters. Pillar of the Future Cyanos is a light attribute machine type level 1 with 500 attack and 1500 defense. This card is always treated as a Sky Striker card. You can discard one spell or special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon one Sky Striker Ace Rose from your deck or graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon from the edge deck for the rest of this turn except machine monsters. You can banish this card from your graveyard, take one of your Sky Striker Ace Rose that is banished or in your graveyard, and either add it to your hand or special summon it. You can only use each effect of Pillar of the Future, Cyanus, once per turn. This card has recently been introduced within Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and is used 1 or 2 copies of. It's pretty easy to summon as it just requires you to discard a spell card. Sky Strikers have so many spell cards within the deck, very easy to achieve. When this card is normal special summoned, you just instantly special summon a Sky Striker Ace Rose from the deck or graveyard, and you're able to, even though you're limited to summoning only machine type monsters for the rest of the turn from the extra deck, all of the Sky Striker Ace Link monsters are machine types, and by banishing this card you can take one of the Sky Striker Ace Rose that is banished or in the graveyard, either choosing to special summon it or add it back to your hand for the next turn. Sky Striker's Ace Azalea Temperance is a Dark Attribute Machine type Link 3 monster with 2,500 attack points. It requires 2 or more monsters, including a Link monster, to summon it. It must first be Link summoned. If this card is special summoned, you can banish 1 spell from your hand or graveyard, then target 1 monster your opponent controls with 2,500 or less attack. Equip that face-up monster to this card as an equip spell. You can only use this effect of Sky Striker Ace Azalea Temperance once per turn. When this card is destroyed by battle, you can special summon 1 other Sky Striker monster from your hand or graveyard. The summoning condition on this card isn't too difficult, as there are many ways of you bringing this card out within the deck, and just by banishing a spell from your hand or graveyard, you can just take a monster your opponent controls. Provided it has 2,500 or less attack, it instantly becomes an equip card, and since it's equipped, unless your opponent can destroy that equipped card, they might not be able to use it, especially if it usually benefits their strategy. It also means that when this card is destroyed by battle, you're instantly able to recover a Sky Striker monster, preventing you from losing any advantage. Blaze, Supreme Ruler of All Dragons, is a fire attribute dragon type, exceeds rank 7 with 2,800 attack and 1,800 defense. It requires 2 level 7 monsters, and once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card, destroy 2 cards, 1 from your hand or field and 1 your opponent controls. You can banish a total of 2 fire and or dragon monsters from your hand and or graveyard, special summon this card from your graveyard, but return it to the extra deck when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Blaze Supreme Ruler of All Dragons once per turn. This card is a generic rank 7 as it only needs just 2 generalized level 7s, it's not specific to any style of deck, and it's pretty easy to summon. 2,800 attack points for a rank 7 is decent, and once per turn, just by detaching material, you have to destroy 1 card from your hand or field and 1 your opponent controls. So it makes sense if you can target a card you've got that has a destruction-based effect, in that it can float into something else or to have an additional benefit. This card can also be revived by banishing 2 fire and or dragon monsters from the hand graveyard. The purpose of this is just really for it to become another body on the field. It's got decent attack points even without materials, and even becoming a vanilla monster, it's fine. It does go back to the extra deck when it leaves the field. This is also quite useful, as then you can potentially summon it once again without having to run recovery cards to bring it back to the extra deck. Archfiend's Advent is a Dark Attribute Fiend type level 6 with 2,500 attack and 1,200 defense. While you control Shining Sarcophagus, you can normal summon this card without tributing. Other monsters you control gain 500 attack points during your turn only. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase, but that monster cannot attack unless you control Shining Sarcophagus after this effect was activated. You can only use this effect of Archfiend's Advent once per turn. This is the Millennium version of the Summoned Skull. It's kind of the Shining Sarcophagus that was supported by Yugioh. This card instantly allows you to normal summon it without a tribute, so long as you've got that other card on the field, and other monsters you control gain 500 attack during your turn. That's a decent boost to each of them. It does restrict itself, but that's fine. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can instantly take control of one of your opponent's monsters, and it's not restricted to typing, attribute, attack or defense points, or by its level. You can take whatever you want. It only stays with you until the end phase, but that's fine as you can tribute that card off, or you can use it for some other purpose. But that monster cannot attack unless you already have a Shining Sarcophagus on the field when this effect was activated. So it can actually be used as part of a threat against your opponent. Phantom of Yubel is a Dark Attribute Fiend type fusion level 9 with 0 attack and 0 defense. It requires a Yubel monster and 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by shuffling the above cards from your hand, field and or graveyard into the deck. It cannot be used as fusion material, and it cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no damage from battles involving this card. When your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect, you contribute this card. The activated effect becomes your opponent destroys 1 Yubel monster in their hand, deck or field. You can only use this effect of Phantom of Yubel once per turn. The summoning conditions on this card aren't too difficult, as Yubel is in of itself a fiend monster with 0 attack and defense, so it can be used 2 Yubels, and there are other cards which meet this condition as well within that deck. Its summoning, it's fine, as long as you don't need a polymerization, it just returns by contact fusion, and it cannot be destroyed by battle. You take no battle damage from battles involving this card, and actually if your opponent activates a monster effect, it destroys one of your Yubel monsters, triggering off its effect to let you summon the higher level Yubel monster. It also wastes your opponent's response, and it's quite similar to something like some of the Dark World cards, as they often require you to discard, and because they're a discard effect, they then trigger off their effects as a result of that discard. Ancient Gear Dragon is an Earth Attribute Machine type level 5 with 500 attack and 2500 defense. It cannot be special summoned. If you control no monsters or all monsters you control are machine monsters, you can summon this card without tributing. When your opponent activates a spell or trap, a card or an effect, as a quick effect, you can send to the graveyard 1 machine monster from your hand or face up the field, or 1 Ancient Gear Golem from your deck, negate that effect. You can only use this effect of Ancient Gear Dragon once per turn. This card is actually something that's been useful and needed within the Ancient Gears deck. Many of them are pretty much monsters that can attack during the battle phase and shut down your opponent's activated effects, but outside of the immunity of the ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, most of the other ones have no real immunity outside of the battle phase. This card is not only able to summon itself, so long as you've got Earth Machine monsters or you have no monsters, but also when your opponent activates a effect, just by sending a machine from the hand or face up on the field, or your Ancient Gear Golem from the deck, you could just shut down that effect. It is a once per turn effect, but it might give the Ancient Gears some sort of fight back against other card interactions. Genix Controller is a Dark Attribute Machine type tuner monster. It's got level 3 with 1400 attack and 1200 defense. This is a basis tuner monster for all of the Genix monsters, and it's very much used consistently within the deck. There are a couple of other tuner monsters that have been introduced recently that can copy the name Genix Controller, and therefore you almost don't need this card, as those cards can just be comparable and they often have some sort of additional effect to them. The legendary Yugioh Incarnate is a Dark Attribute spellcaster at level 10 with question mark attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand by attributing 1 Forbidden 1 monster and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card gains 1000 attack for each Forbidden 1 monster in your graveyard. It's unaffected by other card effects, and once per turn during your end phase, you can add 1 Forbidden 1 monster from your graveyard to your hand. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can reveal any number of Forbidden 1 monsters in your hand, and if you do, draw 1 card for each. The purpose of this card is actually to bring out the Yugioh itself, because what it's doing is it's returning the Forbidden monsters from your graveyard back to your hand, slowly over time during each of your end phases, steadily bringing those monsters back to trigger the original effect of the Yugioh. The benefit of this card as well is it does gain 1000 attack points for each Forbidden 1 monster in your graveyard, but as you continually recover those cards, this card becomes steadily weaker. It also has the ability, when it is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, by just revealing the Forbidden monsters you have in your hand, you draw one card for each. You're hopefully banking on being able to draw into the final pieces in order to win in that turn. The End of Anubis is a Dart attribute Fiend type level 6 with 2500 attack and 0 defense. While this card is face up on the field, all effects of spell, trap, and monster cards that target a card in the graveyard or that activate in the graveyard are negated. This is a decent way of preventing your opponent from activating anything effectively from the graveyard. If you're not planning to use anything in your graveyard, you might as well lock your opponent from doing the same. I also think it's quite powerful for a level 6 monster. It's got 2500 attack points, and there aren't really any restrictions to it. If you can special summon this card, by all means do that, as it's an instant way of bringing the effect on board and online. Guard Dog is an Earth attribute beast type level 3 with 1500 attack and 500 defense. Its effect is flip, your opponent cannot special summon for the rest of this turn. I know there's a couple of flip based decks that can use this card as part of it, and it effectively stops your opponent from special summoning each and every turn by just constantly flipping from face up position to face down and back and forth. That's really annoying as a strategy. It's a very old card and probably needed some form of reprint. I mean, let's actually have a look and see where it is. It's really old. It's from Enemy of Justice, and that was the 17th of May 2006 worldwide. So yeah, as you're seeing it, it is, well, 18 years old. That is why it needed the reprint. Substitute is a water attribute aqua type level 1 with 100 attack and 2000 defense. You contribute one monster to special summon one frog monster from your deck except Frog the Jam. Frog monsters except Frog the Jam cannot be destroyed by battle. This is part of the whole frog archetype. It's a mini set of frog based monsters that aim to bring out the Xyz monster and actually to steal your opponent's monsters and to negate their effects through this. There's also another card which is it's a field spell called Wetlands, which works across any level 2 or below water, aqua type monsters, which this fits the bill, and it gives them 1200 additional attack points, so you can actually make quite a decent kind of string of frog-based monsters just through a couple of interactions with a couple of different cards. Genex Power Planet is a light attribute spellcaster type level 1 with 300 attack and 200 defense. When this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 3 Genex effect monster from your deck to your hand. This is a searcher for the deck, so it adds to the consistency of it, but you aren't likely to be running too many of these given the attack and defense stats of this card. Genex Ally Duradark is a dart attribute machine type level 4 with 1800 attack and 200 defense. Once per turn during a main phase, you can select one face-up attack position monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as this card and destroy it. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. This is a method of destroying your opponent's cards, and it's very consistent with its effect. There's another monster in this deck that can adapt your monster's attribute. So by changing this monster's attribute to whatever your opponent has on their field, you can then trigger off this effect. It does have the downside of negating your ability to attack for the rest of that turn with this monster, but you would often rather trade off guaranteeing the destruction of your opponent's monster than to try and attack into something where they might have a face-down spell or trap card which will interact with this card. Genex Ally Birdman is a dart attribute machine type tuner, level 3 with 1400 attack and 400 defense. You can return one face-up monster you control to the hand, special summon this card from the hand, banish it when it leaves the field. Also, it gains 500 attack if the return monster was wind on the field. The purpose of this card is it benefits actually resetting a lot of your monsters. Anything that has a normal summon based effect that cannot really do it itself can be returned back to the hand and then resummoned to use that effect. This card does get the benefit of an additional 500 attack points, but that's quite mute as it's being used as a tuner, so it's most likely hit for a synchro summon of a monster rather than to use this as a beat stick in and of itself. I should also note that this card is actually also receiving an alternative art that will be found in this set. Scrap Goblin is an Earth attribute Beast Warrior tuner effect monster. It's a level 3 with 0 attack and 500 defense. This card cannot be destroyed by battle. If this face-up defense position card is selected as an attack target, destroy this card at the end of the battle phase. If this card is destroyed by the effect of a scrap card and sent to the graveyard, you can select one scrap monster in your graveyard except Scrap Goblin and add it to your hand. This is part of the scrap archetype. It has the ability to protect itself from being destroyed by battle, which can be useful as most tuners are unable to effectively tune on their own. You're going to need to wait for things to be summoned to the field to synchro summon into something. By having this protected, you can then almost guarantee that. Similar to something like Dark Resonator, which does have a once per turn battle destruction protection effect, and there's another which is the Clockwork Resonator that does provide either a destruction of battle or a destruction of card effect protection once per turn. If this card is destroyed by the effect of a scrap, which most of the cards like to do, it provides them with additional benefits. You can take a scrap monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, so that's a form of recovery. Infernoid Harmodic is a fire attribute fiend type level 3 with 1600 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one Infernoid monster from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can target one monster on the field, destroy it. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you contribute one monster, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. This is a quick effect. This card is able to disrupt your opponent in a couple of ways. It does have a unique condition to it, as you do have to banish an Inferno monster from the hand or graveyard, provided its total levels and ranks are 8 or lower, and this cannot be special summoned in any other way, so it is restricted to its own conditions. Once a turn, just by targeting a monster on the field, you can just straight away destroy it. It doesn't matter if it's yours or your opponent's. It does sacrifice its ability to attack for the rest of the turn once that card's activated, and once per turn during the opponent's turn, so this is quite useful. By attributing a monster you've got, you can take an opponent's card in their graveyard and banish it. Very good if they're trying to set up for a particular type of play, and especially if they've just thrown that card into the graveyard through the effect of a different monster. Infernoid Patrulia is a fire fiend type level 4 with 1800 attack and 0 defense. It can be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one Infernoid monster from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can target one spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you contribute one monster, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. This is a quick effect. This is another one of the monsters for the Infernoid archetype. The ability to summon itself, it's limited by levels, is consistent with how all of the Infernoid's monsters work. And whenever you can target a spell or trap card, you're instantly able to destroy it. It does come at the cost of you not being able to attack for the rest of the turn, but that's the consequence of the effect. It does also let you tribute a monster to target a card in the opponent's graveyard and banish it, which makes it more difficult for them to recover that resource. Infernoid Piety is a fire attribute fiend type level 5 with 2200 attack and 0 defense. It can be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 2 Inferno monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and it cannot be normal summoned or special summoned by other ways. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by attacking an opponent's monster, you can send one random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you contribute one monster, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. The summon conditions on this card require you to banish 2 Inferno monsters, but you will have done that pretty simply. You'll get rid of most of your Inferno straight to the graveyard through this effect. As soon as this card is able to do any sort of battle damage, you're instantly sending a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. That means no destruction-based effects will activate from this. It also means that it's going to be more difficult for your opponent to come back, as it may target a card they need for that turn. It also has the ability to banish any potential threats your opponent has already set up in the graveyard. Infernoid Simus is a level 7 Fire Attribute Fiend type with 2600 attack and 0 defense. It can be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard, or banishing 2 Inferno monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. If this card attacks an opponent's monster, this effect can be activated at the end of the battle phase. Banish 1 card on the field. Once per turn during either player's turn, you contribute 1 monster, then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. The summon condition on this card isn't too difficult, as it just requires you to banish 2 Inferno monsters, and it will set up your graveyard in a way to do that without really any costs. This card, once its attack has gone through successfully on a monster, you're able to just banish a card on the field. That could be either yours or your opponent's, and it can be a spell, a trap, or a monster. It's not specific to any one of those 3. It means it's going to be more difficult unless your opponent is running a banish recovery style of deck for you to get those cards back. And like all the previous Inferno monsters, has the ability to just banish a card in the opponent's graveyard as a cost after removing one of your own monsters. Infernoid Atondal is a Fire Attribute Fiend type level 8 with 2800 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 2 Infernoid monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and it cannot be special summoned by other ways. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can activate this effect. This card can make a second attack in a row. Once per turn during either player's turn, you contribute 1 monster, then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. Like all the others, it's unable to, its summoning condition is pretty easy. You're just banishing 2 Inferno monsters, and you cannot have monsters on the field that are more than level 8 for this card to be special summoned through this effect. Once this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you're able to attack again in a row. That means you can either attack into your opponent's other monster, or to attack into a direct attack, as it's not restricted from that effect. And the final bit of the effect, just by attributing a monster, you're able to make it difficult for your opponent to recover one of their cards as it goes from the graveyard to the banish pile. Infernoid Innochu is a Fire Attribute Fiend type level 10 with 3000 attack and defense. It can be normal summoned or set, and must be special from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Inferno monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. When this card is special summoned, you can destroy all other monsters on the field. Once per turn during either player's turn, when a spell, trap, or card effect is activated, you contribute 1 monster, negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. This is probably one of the most powerful versions of the Infernoid monsters. It has the highest attack and defense stats, and it's a level 10 monster. Its summon condition is also the most tricky because it banishes 3 of your Inferno monsters rather than 2 or 1, as is said with the previous monsters that are lower levels. The card's effect, when this card is special summoned, you're just able to wipe out all other monsters on the field. So you have to be aware of that. It does Dark Hole pretty much the entire field. If you have other monsters on the field, it'll affect yours just as much as your opponent's, so you'll aim to try and bring this out without having any cards on your field. And when your opponent activates an effect of any kind, and this is applied during yours and your opponent's turn, just by attributing a monster, you're able to shut down that effect and banish that card once it's used its activation. Spiritual Beast Rampengu is a Wind Attribute Beast type level 4 with 1600 attack and 400 defense. The effect is, once per turn, you can banish 1 Ritual Beast monster from your etch deck, and send 1 Ritual Beast monster with the same type as that monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only special summon a Spiritual Beast Rampengu once per turn. The design on this card is used specifically so that you can send the particular monsters to the graveyard to hopefully set up and to go into your fusion monsters by contact fusing them, by effectively reviving them to the field and then contact fusing them out into their respective fusion monsters. It doesn't require you to use any sort of polymerization or fusion card, and this is a decent setup for that strategy as it's consistent. Infernoid Permeus is a fire attribute fiend type level 1 with 0 attack and defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one Infernoid monster from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and it cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can target one set card on the field, shuffle it into the deck. That card cannot be activated in response to this effect's activation. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you contribute one monster, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. This is a quick effect. This is, of all the examples given so far, the weakest of the Infernoid monsters, with 0 attack and defense, but then again it is a level 1, and its summoning requirement only requires a single Infernoid monster to be banished from the graveyard. Its ability lets you just target a set card on the field, so it can be yours or your opponent's, and it can be a face down monster or it could be a face down spell or trap card, and since it gets to be shuffled back into the deck with your opponent unable to respond to this card's activation, it prevents them from using that effect, and it prevents you from wasting this card's effect. The final bit of the effect, just by attributing a monster, you're able to banish a card in the opponent's graveyard, is very on theme with how the Infernoids run. Infernoid Shet is a fire attribute fiend type level 6 with 2400 attack and 0 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 2 Inferno monsters from your hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower, and it cannot be special summoned by other ways. When this card declares an attack, you can banish one monster from your opponent's etch deck, their choice. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can tribute one monster, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. The summoning condition on this card requires you to banish 2 Inferno monsters, so it's kind of slightly more powerful than the base level Inferno monsters. As soon as this card declares an attack, you're just able to banish a monster from the opponent's etch deck. Downside of this is it is their choice, so depending on the situation, they will know which cards they don't need and will therefore banish those rather than the ones they can actually use for the time being. It does still act in your benefit because by slowly triggering off this effect, if you can do it consistently each and every turn, your opponent will eventually get to a point where they have to get rid of some of their better cards as they have no other weaker options to go for. The final part of the effect, just by attributing a monster, you can banish a card in your opponent's graveyard, applies to all other Infernoid monsters. Infernoid Decatron is a fire attribute fiend type tuner effect monster. It's level 1 with 500 attack and 200 defense. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one Infernoid monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Infernoid Decatron. And if you do, increase this card's level by the level of the sent monster, and if you do that, this card's name becomes that monster's original name, and replace this effect with that monster's original effects. This is the keystone, the cornerstone of how the Inferno monsters need to work, as all of the other ones require you to banish other Inferno monsters from the hand or graveyard. This can allow itself to be summoned, and as soon as you summon it, whether that's normal or special summoned, by sending an Inferno monster from the deck to the graveyard, you can adjust the level of this card by the level of that monster by increasing it, so it makes it easier to act as a tuner for a high level synchro summon. And this card not only takes the name of that monster you've sent, but it also takes the effect of that monster. Therefore, depending on the situation, you'll have a variety of different Infernoid monsters that will apply at that point. Spiritual Beast Tamer Winder is a wind attribute psychic type level 4 with 1600 attack and 1800 defense. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card by battle or card effect, you can special summon one Ritual Beast monster from your deck or etch deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only special summon Spiritual Beast Tamer Winders once per turn. The condition on this card is similar to a lot of the Spiritual Beast monsters, in that as soon as this card is just removed from the field, you can just replace it with a Ritual Beast monster from your deck or extra deck. Since it eliminates the summoning conditions of it, it's actually really useful, as depending on your situation you can know what you want to summon into. Orcust Harp Horror is a Dark Attribute Machine type level 4 with 1700 attack and 1400 defense. You can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon one Orcust monster from your deck, except Orcust Harp Horror. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except Dark monsters. You can only use this effect of Orcust Harp Horror once per turn. This card just lets you go into some of your other Orcust plays by bringing those monsters straight from the deck to the field, but it does come at the downside of having to banish this card. It also locks you into special summoning Dark Attribute monsters for the duration of the turn. Diviner of the Herald is a light attribute fairy type tuner effect monster. It's a level 2 with 500 attack and 300 defense. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one fairy monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, increase this card's level by that monster's level until the end of this turn. If this card is tributed, you can special summon one level 2 or lower fairy monster from your hand or deck, except Owner of the Herald. Diviner of the Herald. You can only use each effect of Diviner of the Herald once per turn. This card is quite critical within the Herald. You've got so many Herald monsters: Herald of Perfection, Herald of Ultimateness, and these are very much used in order to bring out some of the more powerful Herald monsters. It is also, since it's a tuner, it can actually bring out the level 4 version, which is also a synchro monster, and it also helps by pitching a fairy monster from the deck or extra deck to the graveyard. By adjusting its level, not only are you sending that fairy monster, which can probably be revived from that graveyard for various other purposes, but adjusting this to a point where it can be used for a higher level synchro play. You're also able to special summon a level 2 or lower fairy monster from your hand or deck, which can be useful in lots of link plays. General Wayne of the Ice Barrier is a auto attribute warrior type level 5 with 2100 attack and 400 defense. Spell and traps sent from the field to your opponent's graveyard are banished instead. You can only use each of the following effects of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier once per turn. If your opponent controls a monster and you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Ice Barrier spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. This card makes it difficult for any of your opponent's cards that have a double utility effect from activating. For example, you do have various traps that can either reoccur from the graveyard. If this card is present, those cards are banished and therefore usually typically unrecoverable. It also means that something like Breakthrough Skill, which if sent to the graveyard can actually be activated again by banishing it, except on the turn it's sent to the graveyard to activate its effect, means that you're locking them out of these double utility cards. This card is easily able to be special summoned, and you can kind of ignore the fact it's a level 5 monster, provided your opponent has a monster and you control at least one Ice Barrier monster. And as soon as you special summon this card, you're able to just search for any Ice Barrier spell or trap cards from your deck to your hand to add to its consistency. Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier, is a water attribute Sea Serpent tuner effect monster, level 1 with 400 attack and 200 defense. While you control another Ice Barrier monster, monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. During the main phase, you can send one level 3 or lower Ice Barrier monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, this card's level becomes the same as that monster's until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier once per turn. This card is brilliant as a tuner monster because it has multiple different effects. First ability, so long as you've got another Ice Barrier monster on your field, all of your opponent's monsters just lose 500 attack and defense. That instantly stat reduction on both of their offense and defense stats is perfect. And during your main phase, you can send a level 3 or lower Ice Barrier from the deck to the graveyard and adjust this card's level, which means this can go anywhere from a level 1 as it is, all the way up to a level 4 to make it easier to go into your higher level synchro monsters such as Trishula. It does also mean that you're sending whatever monster from the deck to the graveyard, and it's typically easier for you to search from the graveyard or recover from the graveyard than it is to recover from the deck. Sprite Blue is a Dart Attribute Thunder type level 2 with 1100 attack and 1000 defense. If you control a level or rank 2 monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Sprite Blue once per turn this way. If this card is special summoned, you can add one Sprite monster from your deck to your hand except Sprite Blue. You can only use this effect of Sprite Blue once per turn. This is one of the cards from the Sprite archetype which is quite challenging to face. It's a level 2 monster, and so long as you have a rank 2 monster already on your field, you can straight away special summon this card. Once this card is just special summoned, you can search for any monster that happens to be a Sprite monster within the archetype. Typically you will go for either the Sprite that, such as Sprite Jet, which lets you, when it's special, go for a spell or trap card, or you could go for any of the other varieties. One of them boosts up attack points, there's another one that negates monster effects, there's another that negates spell and trap effects. Sprite Jet is a Dart Attribute Thunder type level 2 with 1300 attack and 700 defense. If you control a level or rank 2 monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon a Sprite Jet once per turn this way. If this card is special summoned, you can add one Sprite spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Sprite Jet once per turn. Similarly to the previous one, this one searches for a card. The previous one, the Sprite Blue, searches for monsters. This one searches for a spell or trap card, and that's useful as one of them increases your level or rank 2 monsters by 1400 attack and defense. There's another one that actually banishes cards. There are others that have some sort of interruption play, so it's all about adding consistency. Sprite Pixies is a Dart Attribute Thunder type level 2 with 1400 attack and defense. If you control a level or rank 2 monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Sprite Pixies once per turn this way. During damage calculation, if another level, rank, or link 2 monster you control battles an opponent's monster, as a quick effect you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. That monster you control gains attack and defense equal to that opponent's monster's attack until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Sprite Pixies once per turn. This card acts very much like an Honest for the Sprite deck. It's not attribute reliant, that's the only kind of other benefit and plus to it, but it does exactly the same thing, and it's very useful as a way of disrupting your opponent. And often if they don't know this is the type of deck you're running, or happen to have no knowledge of the Sprite deck, they'll actually walk into your monsters by thinking they can get over them, only to have this card activate its ability. Sprite Red is a Fire Attribute Thunder type level 2 with 1200 attack and 1800 defense. If you control a level link 2 monster, you can special this card from your hand. You can only special summon Sprite Red once per turn. This way, when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you contribute one other level, rank, or link 2 monster, negate that effect. Then if you attributed a rank or link 2 monster to activate this effect, you can destroy that monster. You can only use this effect of Sprite Red once per turn. This card serves as a monster effect negation. It's similar to something like Solemn Warning or Solemn Strike. I think it's one of those two cards. And it's pretty easy to use its effect. Either you tribute a level 2 monster, in which case it just negates that opponent's monster's effect, or the other choice is to go for the rank or link 2, the extra deck monsters, and in doing that, not only do you negate the effect, but you also destroy it. Depending on the situation, you might want to go for one or the other. It's a decent card, and with it, it's got 1800 defense points, is able to kind of stick around by itself without needs for too much protection. Kurikara Divakarnate is a Fire Attribute Fairy type effect monster, level 1 with 1500 attack and defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special from your hand by attributing all face-up monsters on the field that activated their effects this turn in your opponent's monster zones. Gains 1500 attack for each monster attributed to special summon this card. During your end phase, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field. You can only use this effect of Kurikara Divakarnate once per turn. This card is a good disruptor for your opponent, but it depends on when you use it. You kind of need to know what your opponent's running and how far they're likely to go into their play in order to get any benefit from its effects. For example, if your opponent effectively uses something twice in a turn, this card is still going to become, a 4,500 attack monster, and for a level 1 monster that isn't a bad effect. It tributes all face-up monsters on the field that activates the effects in the opponent's monster zone, so it just wipes out all of them. And since it's sending those cards, not destroying them, none of them will be able to trigger off of their effects. This is also, during the end phase, able to just take what monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your field, so if anything, it's just further advantage for you, as there are no downsides. It's just limited to how far your opponent is really going to activate whatever effects they're going to use. Blazing Cartesis the Virtuous is a light attribute spellcaster type tuner effect monster. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack and defense. If you control a form of Baz, or if it's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. During your main phase, as a quick effect, you can fusion summon one level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. During the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard this turn, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous once per turn. This is one of the cards part of the branded archetype, and it's really annoying to have to face this deck. Just so long as you've got a form of Albaz, either controlling it on the field or in your graveyard, you're just straight away able to special summon this card. And during the main phase, you can just fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster using monsters from your hand or field as material. It doesn't require a use of polymerization, so that's less of a limitation. As soon as during the end phase a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard, you're just able to recover this card and then hopefully recycle its effects. Ice Jade Ran Adrian is a water attribute aqua type tuner effect monster. It's a level 7 with 1500 attack and 2500 defense. This card's name becomes Ice Jade C-Note Enian Cradle while equipped with an equip card. You can discard one other Ice Jade card or water monster, special summon this card from your hand. Then you can special summon one Ice Jade token. It's that water level 3 with 0 attack and defense. While that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from their extra deck except water monsters. You can use this effect of Ice Jade Ran Adrian once per turn. The summoning on this card isn't difficult, as you just need to discard another Ice Jade card or a water attribute monster. You're going to be running purely those style of cards in that deck. Once this card is special summoned, you just generate a token, and it does restrict you in order to just use water attribute monsters from the extra deck, but since this is a tuner monster, you can go into a level 10 synchro monster with just a couple of cards. It can only use this effect once per turn, but it also copies the name of a particular card which might have its own uses. So we'll just have a quick look at what this card does as well. So yeah, this is their field spell. This just copies the name of it. When this card is activated, you can add one of your Ice Jade monsters that is banished or in your graveyard to your hand. Once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned except during a damage step, you can target one monster you control. That monster, along with any face-up monsters your opponent currently controls, lose attack equal to the target monster's original attack until the end of this turn. You can only activate one Ice Jade C-Note Enian Cradle turn. There's an interaction within the deck, and it often kind of revolves around this card. This instantly is able to search for cards, and so there must be some additional benefit, especially since your opponent's monsters are going to be losing attack equal to the targeted monster's original attack until the end phase. That means that progressively going to be weakening based on those types of stats. Barracks is a Dark Attribute Fiend type fusion at level 5 with 1380 attack and 1530 defense. It requires a Frenzied Panda and a Ryukushin in order to summon it. I do not understand why Konami is putting some of these style of cards into this support package, considering that none of the cards, be that its fusion materials or this card, have seen play in many years. It's one of the first series of fusion monsters, alongside things such as Flame Swordsman, but then again it's had its own archetype support and is therefore justified in having additional copies of itself. This card has never actually seen any actual... I don't think it's seen any play in any sort of competitive scene. It's one of the oldest cards, and you can tell that because of its stat lineup. Now, for the most part, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been around in that situation where either monsters have like 0-0 as the back end of their, attack and defense stats, or they'll have a 50 at most. So you might have something that has either 1,500 attack or 1,550 attack. That's an example. In the very oldest parts of the game, you had monsters that had these weird stat lineups, and because of that, it made things a little bit more confusing. And so I think that was a general consensus idea that would actually stick to kind of more rounded numbers, make things a little bit easier for the player base. This to me indicates that they might have further support for this somewhere down the line. Otherwise, there isn't any reason for playing this. Maybe there's going to be some generic kind of archetype that kind of strings all the normal based fusion monsters together. Similar to how you've got things like the Shining Sarcophagus, which attached all of kind of Yugimoto's decks together, their archetypes together. There has to be a reason behind this. Skelgon is a dark attribute zombie type fusion effect. Well, it's a normal monster. It's a level 6 with 1,700 attack and 1,900 defense. It requires the Snake Hair and a Blackland Fire Dragon. Because this card is similar to Varrock's in the sense it has no effect, there must be a reason for them starting to run these types of cards, or it might be just a reprinting thing, maybe to get people to be more aware of some of the ancient cards, considering that, you still have new players entering the formats. Ritual Beast Ulti Conahawk is a wind attribute thunder type fusion effect monster. It's a level 6 with 1,400 attack and 1,600 defense. It requires a Ritual Beast Tamer monster and a Spiritual Beast monster. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by banishing the above cards you control, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. You do not use polymerization. Once per turn, you can target 2 of your banished Ritual Beast cards, return them to the graveyard, and if you do, add 1 Ritual Beast card from your deck to your hand. During either player's turn, you can return this card you control to the extra deck, then target 2 of your banished monsters, 1 Ritual Beast Tamer monster and 1 Spiritual Beast monster, special summon them in defense position. This card is very annoying to have when it's on the field, as it can kind of reoccur itself and other versions of the same card just by kind of tag teaming itself out. The conditions on its summoning aren't difficult, as it just requires a Ritual Beast Tamer and a Spiritual Beast monster. You'll have plenty of those within the deck, and it doesn't require any polymerization. So long as you have the 2 cards on your field, you just banish them and bring this card out. Each turn, you can just take 2 of your banished ritual cards and they get returned to the graveyard, and therefore you'll be able to access them straight from that graveyard. And in exchange for doing that, not only do you recover those cards, but you get to search for a Ritual Beast card from your deck to your hand. I should also mention that this is getting an alternative art as another version of itself. Ritual Beast Ulti Gaia Pelio is a light attribute psychic type fusion effect monster. It's a level 10 with 3,200 attack and 2,100 defense. It requires a Ritual Beast Ulti monster and a Ritual Beast Tamer monster and 1 Ritual Spiritual Beast monster. It must be special summoned from your edge deck by banishing the above cards you control, and it cannot be special summoned by other ways. You do not use polymerization. If summoned this way, this card gains this effect. During either player's turn, when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, you can banish 1 Ritual Beast card from your hand, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. The summoning conditions on this card might seem quite strange and difficult to achieve, but actually within the deck it's more than reasonable and manageable. The summoning of a Ritual Beast Ulti monster usually just requires a Ritual Beast Tamer and a Spiritual Beast in and of themselves, and then you'll just need another one of those, each of those, in order to bring this out. It doesn't require you to wait on polarization, so you aren't sitting on anything, and you can usually search out consistently within the deck. This card has the ability to, each turn, negate a spell, a trap, or a monster effect by banishing a Ritual Beast card from your hand. This is very similar to that Naturia monster. There's a fusion one with 2,800 attack points. It has similar style of effect, and it just negates things. So it's kind of their boss monster and probably the most difficult monster for you to out. Granguganol, the Dust Dragon, is a light attribute spellcaster fusion effect monster. It's a level 8 with 2500 attack and 2500 defense. It requires a Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous and a light or dark monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can send one level 6 or higher light or dark monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. If a monster is special summoned by your opponent's activated monster effect, except during a damage step, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard. Special summon one Dogmatica monster from your deck or one Despia monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Granguganol, the Dust Dragon, once per turn. The summoning condition on this card isn't difficult, as the particular monster is pretty easy to search within the branded archetype, and it just requires a light or dark monster, so it can be a super polymerization target as well. Once this card is fusion summoned, you're just able to send a level 6 or higher light or dark monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, so it helps to set up for further plays in future. And if a monster is special summoned by the opponent's activated monster effect, you're able to just banish this card from the field or graveyard, and you can either choose to special summon the Dogmatica monster or a Despia from your extra deck, and this makes it very difficult for your opponent to kind of get around, as a lot of these cards integrate so well with each other. When one of them goes, the next one gets replaced. Genex Ally Axel is a dark attribute machine type synchro level 8 with 2600 attack and 2000 defense. It requires a Genex tuner monster plus one or more non-tuner monsters. Once per turn, you can discard one card to select one level 4 or low machine type monster from your graveyard and special summon it. The attack of that monster is doubled until the end phase, but it cannot attack your opponent directly. Remove that monster from play during your end phase. The summoning on this card isn't too bad, as it just needs a Genex tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters, so the rest of the non-tuners can be anything, and that just adds to consistency. Just each turn, by discarding a card, you can recover a level 4 or low machine type monster. The attack points of it are doubled, so if you were to bring back even the Genex tuner monster they have, the Genex controller, it would become a 2800 attack points monster. It does come at the downside of not being able to attack directly, but often in the case you're able to maybe attack with that monster first and then attack with this monster in straight afterwards to maximize the amount of damage you can do to the opponent. It does come at the cost of removing that monster from play during the end phase, but there are ways of adding and recovering those cards from the banished pile back to your hand. Ib, the Wild Chalice Justicar, is a water attribute spellcaster synchro tuner monster. It's a level 5 with 1800 attack and 2100 defense. It requires a tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters. For this card's synchro summon, you can treat one Wild Chalice normal monster you control as a tuner. You can only use each of the following effects of Ib, the Wild Chalice Justicar, once per turn. If this card is synchro summoned, you can add a Wild Legacy card from your deck to your hand. If this synchro summoned card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon Wild Chalice monster from your deck or graveyard, except Ib, the Wild Chalice Justicar. Since this is a level 5 monster, it's pretty simple to bring it out. I mean, for example, you could have a level 1, 2, 3 or 4 tuner monster, and then the reversing levels in the non-tuner forms. It's pretty easy, as it doesn't have any requirements, there aren't any attributes, there aren't any named monsters that are needed to bring it out. And when this card is synchro summoned, you're just able to search for any Wild Legacy card you want from the deck to the hand, so it's an instant search for consistency. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can just take a Wild Chalice monster from the deck or graveyard and special summon it without any restrictions. Bear in mind, this card is also a synchro tuner, so it's useful in bringing out some of the high level synchro monsters that often need a synchro based tuner in order to bring them out. Ice Jade Gymir Agdurin is a water attribute archetype synchro effect monster. It's a level 10 with 3000 attack and 1500 defense. It requires a water tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters. The quick effect is you can activate this effect face up monsters you control cannot be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects this turn. Then if you activate this effect in response to your opponent's card effect activation, and your opponent has a card with that name on the field and or graveyard, you can banish those cards. If a card is banished by your opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard except during a damage step, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Ice Jade Agarin once per turn. This is the boss monster for the Ice Jade archetype. It's a level 10, so it's quite decent. It does require a specific water tuner monster, so there is a little bit of a limit to it, but it's kind of diverse enough to be run within plenty of water root decks. The turn you activate this effect, you're just able to protect your face-up monsters. They cannot be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects for the turn, so you can grant them a certain level of immunity. And if you've activated this in response to your opponent's card, if they also have another version of that card anywhere, then that card also gets banished. It is highly unlikely that you're going to be able to really use this effect unless they're using a very generic card. And it also means that if a card is banished by your opponent's card effect, as long as this card's in the graveyard, you are able to then revive this card, so it does have reoccurrence to it. Gigantic Sprite is a Dark Attribute Thunder Xyz effect monster. It's a rank 2 with 1600 attack and defense. It requires 2 level 2 monsters. For this card's Xyz summon, you can treat link 2 monsters you control as level 2 monsters for material. The original attack of this card that has a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link material, as its material becomes doubled. During your main phase, you can activate this effect, detach 1 material from a monster you control, and if you do, special summon 1 level 2 monster from your deck. Also, neither player can special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except level, rank, or link 2 monsters. You can only use this effect of Gigantic Sprite once per turn. The summoning condition on this card isn't difficult, as you can actually use a link 2 monster you control as the material itself, and in doing so, this card becomes a 3200 attack monster. By just detaching a material from monster control, it can be from this monster or it can be from another Xyz monster that you've got, you can straight away bring out a level 2 monster. And remember, with the sprites, some have negation abilities, some have attack boosting abilities, some have other searching abilities, so it just adds to consistency. It also locks both players from being able to special summon anything for the rest of the turn unless it is a level, a rank, or a link 2 play monster. This used to be a lot more consistent, but with things such as SP Little Knight, which are link 2, and those can be run in generic decks, it's not so difficult for your opponent to kind of outside and manage this card's effect. Ritual Beast Ulti Kaimon Falcus is a Wind Attribute Psychic Link effect monster. It's a link 2 with 1800 attack points and it requires 2 Ritual Beast monsters to summon it. Ritual Beast monsters this card points to gain 600 attack and defense. You can banish 1 Ritual Beast card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves. Normal summon 1 Ritual Beast monster from your hand. You can only use this effect of Ritual Beast Ulti Kaimon Falcus once per turn. As a quick effect, you can return this card you control to the extra deck, then target 2 of your banished monsters, 1 Ritual Beast Tamer monster, and 1 Spiritual Beast monster, special summon them in defense position. This card is able to instantly boost up to 2 of your Ritual Beast monsters by 600 attack and defense, as both of the link arrows point downwards onto your zone. By banishing a Ritual Beast card from the graveyard, you can instantly normal summon a Ritual Beast monster from the hand, so it adds to your kind of field advantage. And once per turn, as a quick effect, just by returning this card, you can take 2 of your banished monsters and special summon them in defense position, and since one is the Ritual Beast Tamer and the other is a Spiritual Beast monster, you're able to then bring out a fusion monster from that effect. Aromatherapy Jasmine is a light attribute plant type link monster. It's a link 2 with 1800 attack points. It requires 2 plant monsters, and if your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card and any plant monsters it points to cannot be destroyed by battle. You contribute 1 monster this card points to, special summon 1 plant monster from your deck in defense position. You can only use this effect of Aromatherapy Jasmine once per turn. Once per turn, if you gain life points, add 1 plant monster from your deck to your hand. This card doesn't require too many restrictions on it. For starters, so long as you're running a plant-based deck, it can be run within that deck. Once your life points are higher than your opponent's, this provides not only this card with a battle protection effect, but any monster this card points to, so that's a maximum of 2 other cards. You can attribute 1 monster this card points to, and you can just instantly special summon a plant monster from your deck in defense position. so that adds to the consistency of the deck. And each turn, if you gain life points, and there are so many cards within plant archetypes that work with this effect, even generic cards, you can instantly search for plant monsters from your deck to your hand, adding to the deck's consistency and actually hopefully overwhelming your opponents by kind of managing their resources. Proxy F Magician is a fire attribute Cyberse linked effect monster. It's got a link 2 rating and it has 1,400 attack points. It requires 2 effect monsters, and during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your etch deck, using monsters from your field as fusion material. If a fusion monster is fusion summoned to a zone this card points to, you can special summon 1 monster with 1,000 or less attack from your hand. You can only use each effect of Proxy F Magician once per turn. The summoning condition on this card isn't too difficult, as it just needs 2 effect monsters, and it grants you the ability to just fusion summon monsters from your field so long as they have the material requirements. If a fusion monster is just summoned to this card's zones that they point to, you can also special summon a monster with 1,000 or less attack from your hand, so this all adds to your field presence. Sprite Sprine is a fire attribute Thunder linked 2 with 1,400 attack points. It requires 2 monsters, including a level, a rank, or a link 2 monster, and it cannot be used as link material the turn it is link summoned. You can only use one of the following effects of Sprite Sprined per turn, and only once that turn. If this card is link summoned, you can send 1 level 2 monster from your deck to the graveyard. If another monster is special summoned while this card is on the field, except during a damage step, you can detach 1 material from an Exceeds monster you control, then target 1 monster on the field, return it to the hand. The summoning on this card isn't difficult because it just requires materials that are, either a level, a rank, or a link 2 to bring it out. You're able to, when it's link summoned, send a level 2 monster from your deck to the graveyard, and from there you're hopefully able to revive that card. And if another monster is special summoned while this card is on the field, by just detaching a material from it, you can take a monster on the field and return it to the hand, and by being able to disrupt your opponent with these plays, they will hopefully be unable to go into their extended combos. It's like an emergency evacuation device. Snatch Steal is a equip spell card. Its effect is equip only to a monster your opponent controls. Take control of the equipped monster during each of your opponent's standby phases. They gain 1,000 life points. This card has seen so many times where it's been banned and has only recently been allowed back into the game. It gives you the opportunity to actually take any of your opponent's monsters, and unlike things such as Brain Control, which have limitations to them, whereas that card can only steal a monster that your opponent has, which can be normal summoned or set, and can't go for the extra net monsters, this can take any monster. So if you can take a highly invested monster that your opponent has, and maybe tribute over that monster to bring out another monster, then you've wasted your opponent's resources. They do gain 1,000 life points during each of their standby phases that kind of this turn rolls around with. But the problem is, in more cases than not, you're going to be able to out your opponent's monster before they ever get these life point increases. Medallion of the Ice Barrier is a normal spell card. Add 1 Ice Barrier monster from your deck to your hand. This is a generic card for the Ice Barrier archetype, and it's a rotor inbuilt for that deck. This card is also going to have an alternative art, and that will all be released in Terminal Revenge. Spirit Converter is a continuous spell card. The effect is once per turn you can target 1 Exceeds monster you control, attach 1 face-up level 4 light monster you control to that target as an Exceeds material. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, target 2 level 4 light thunder type monsters with the same name in your graveyard, add those targets to your hand. This card is very specific to certain types of decks and can only really be run effectively within a thunder based deck, such as the Bro Thunder, the Mar Thunder, Sister Path Thunder. Those all work alongside it. You've got other decks like Thunder Dragons that may take some form of advantage, but generally there isn't too much that kind of springs to mind. It requires especially level 4 light monsters, and you need to be running an Exceeds specific deck to get any benefit from this card. It does help you to reattach materials, which very few cards do, and it does it in a consistent way. I just wish we had more of these that are a bit less limiting, and even if they're attribute specific, I wouldn't mind so much. Void Vanishment is a continuous spell card. You can discard one card to add one Void spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except Void Vanishment or Null and Void. Also, you cannot or special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except Infernoid monsters. You can only use this effect of Void Vanishment once per turn. If an Infernoid monster you control battles an opponent's monster, after damage calculation, you can send this card to the graveyard, banish those monsters. This is a consistent search for the Void Infernoid archetype. By just discarding a card, you can just add any Void spell or trap card from the deck to your hand, except a copy of itself, and Null and Void is a card which might have Void in its name, but it has nothing to do with the archetype. You are restricted from normal special summoning for the rest of the turn, but it will lock you into Infernoid monsters to summon it. And if an Inferno monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you're just able to send this card to the graveyard to banish those monsters. This can be useful if your monster is actually going to be, defeated in battle, and you don't really need to search for any other cards. Void Imagination is a continuous spell card. The effect is Inferno monsters you control whose original levels are 2 or higher become level 1, and all battle damage they inflict to your opponent is halved. You can send this card to the graveyard to fusion summon one Inferno fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials. If your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, and you do not, you can also use up to 6 monsters in your deck as fusion materials. The purpose of this card is, with all of the Inferno monsters, they can only summon themselves to the field if you've got monsters that are total levels are 8 or less. And since Inferno monsters are effect monsters, this is also within their own restrictions. With using this effect, you limit their levels to all become level 1. This does mean you can summon multiple Inferno monsters onto your field without really any restriction, but the thing is that your opponent is going to be taking half damage until you get rid of this card, which is where the second part of this effect actually comes into play. By sending this card to the graveyard, you're just instantly able to fusion summon an Infernoid fusion monster from the extra deck, using the monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials, so it's pretty easy. But if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, and you don't have anything, you can use 6 monsters in your deck as fusion materials, so you're able to use a resource typically most decks don't allow you to within the deck, as the full cost of this card's fusion summon of a monster. This card is also going to have an alternative art within Revenge. Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier is a continuous spell card. When this card is activated, you can target one level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monster in your graveyard, special summon it. While you control 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters you control are unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. You can only activate one Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier per turn. This card is useful for recovering a level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monster and just special summon it straight to your field. So long as you've got 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters, your extra deck monsters that your opponent controls cannot use their effect against those Ice Barrier monsters. But you'll have to keep an eye on that and make sure that you always have at least 3 Ice Barrier monsters on your field at any given time. Sprite Starter is a quick play spell card. The effect is to special summon one sprite monster from your deck, but lose life points equal to its original attack. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this effect resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except level, rank, or link 2 monsters. You can only activate one Sprite Starter per turn. This is really easy to use as an effect, as all sprite monsters are reaching those level 2s, rank 2s, or link 2s. There isn't any restriction to that. You do lose life points equal to the original attack of the monster, but most of them aren't anything above a 1400 attack range, and so you can afford to use this maybe 2 to 3 times if you need to, and not be too concerned about the life point cost. Sprite Gamma Burst is a quick play spell card. The effect is all level, rank, or link 2 monsters currently on the field gain 1400 attack and defense until the end of the turn. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one level, rank, or link 2 monster you control. it gains 1400 attack until the end of the opponent's turn. You can only use one Sprite Gamma Burst effect per turn and only once that turn. This card helps to just boost all your 2 version monsters, so level, rank, or link 2 monsters by 1400 attack and defense. That is enough if you can get an entire field of level 2 monsters to OTK your opponent. It also has the ability to grant one of those monsters a boost of 1400 attack points, so long as the card isn't activated on the same turn by banishing this card from the graveyard. Ritual Beast Ambush is a normal trap card. The effect is to target one of your Ritual Beast Tamer monsters and one of your Spiritual Beast monsters that are banished and or in your graveyard, special summon them in defense position. After this card is activated, you cannot special summon monsters except Ritual Beast monsters for the rest of this turn. You can only activate one Ritual Beast Ambush per turn. This card helps you to just set up for your plays. If you can use its effect, for example, during your opponent's end phase after they've finished the battle phase, it means that your opponent can't really set up on you again, and then you can use those particular cards to go into whichever of the Ritual Beast fusion monsters you need. Tri-Brigade Mercuria is a Dark Wing Beast level 4 with 800 attack and 0 defense. When your opponent activates a monster effect while you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Albaz as a material, as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, negate that effect. If this card is banished, you can add from your deck to your hand one Fallen of Albaz or one monster that mentions it except Tri-Brigade Mercuria. You can only use each effect of Tri-Brigade Mercuria once per turn. As soon as your opponent tries to activate an effect, so long as you've got a fusion monster that has Fallen of Albaz as its material, by sending this card from the hand or face up to the graveyard, you can just instantly negate that effect. This is really useful as a hand trap, but it's very specific to the, that type of deck, the branded deck. When this card is banished, you can add from your deck to your hand just any Fallen of Albaz or one that mentions it, except a copy of itself, so it adds to the consistency of the deck. Springen's Kit is a Dark Attribute Beast type level 4 with 1700 attack and 1000 defense. If you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add to your hand one of your branded spell or trap cards that is banished or in your deck or graveyard, then place one card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. You can only use each effect of Springen's Kit once per turn. This card is quite decent as it has 1700 attack, quite good for a level 4 monster. Provided you have a Fallen of Albaz fusion monster, you can just instantly special summon this card, and when this is either normal or special summoned, you can add either one of your branded spell traps that is banished, or it comes from the deck or the graveyard, and you just replace a certain other card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. This is another one of those combo extenders. The Golden Sword Soul. This is a light attribute spellcaster type tuner effect monster. It's a level 4 with 1800 attack and 1500 defense. When a monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, negate that attack. Then if you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material, you can destroy that monster declared an attack. If a monster is banished face up except during a damage step, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard. Special summon one light spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard whose attack equals its own defense. You can only use this effect of the Golden Sword Soul once per turn. This card, as soon as a monster declares an attack, you're just able to special summon it and negate that attack. And if you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz, you can instantly destroy that monster that declared the attack. If a monster is banished face up, except during a damage step, just by banishing this card from the field or graveyard, you can instantly just special summon a light spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard. So long as its attack equals its own defense, that's fine, but it is somewhat limited. Branded Lost is a continuous spell card. The effect is the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. If you fusion summon a fusion monster, you can add one Fallen of Albaz or one monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Branded Lost once per turn. This card basically makes it impossible for you to interact with fusion monsters. It prevents you from being able to shut down their summoning, and as soon as a fusion is occurred, you can just instantly search for a Fallen of Elbaz or one monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand, so it makes it very difficult for you to actually respond to anything. Branded Fusion is a normal spell card. Fusion summon one fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Elbaz as material from your etch deck, using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. You cannot special summon monsters from your etch deck except fusion monsters. The turn you activate this card. You can only activate 1 branded fusion per turn. The most frustrating thing about this card is it's fine if you're using it as yourself, but when your opponent is using this against you, bear in mind that they can use materials from the hand, deck, or field as fusion material. It means that they're most likely going to target the deck, and so not only are they deck thinning, they're getting out a very powerful fusion monster, and it's just going to add to the consistency of how that deck responds. There are also a few targets that work alongside branded fusion, so it's not that you're restricted to 1 or 2 options. Branded Retribution is a counter trap card. The effect is when a spell or trap or monster effect is activated, that includes an effect that special summons a monster, return to the extra deck 1 face-up fusion monster you control, or 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard that mention Fallen of Elbaz material, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy that card. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 branded spell trap in your graveyard, except a branded Retribution, add it to your hand. You can only use 1 branded Retribution effect per turn and only once a turn. Best thing about this is if this is being used against you, it only really works if there is an effect that special summons a monster, and then that's fine. That is when this card interacts. You do have to, it's not too much of a cost, you're just returning an extra monster or 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard back to the etch deck, which means you can technically use them again, and then you get to negate and destroy that. You can then banish this card to target a branded spell trap and recover at the card, so it makes it very easy for your opponent to gain a lot of advantage. I'd say the only good thing is that it doesn't negate entirely everything, it's just the summoning of any cards, so just be aware if you're playing against this type of deck. Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, is a dark attribute worm type fusion effect monster. It's a level 8 with 3000 attack and 2500 defense. It requires a Fallen of Elbaz plus a fusion, a synchro, exceeds, or a link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, and once per turn as a quick effect, you can send 1 fusion monster from your deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Elbaz as material. Banish 1 monster on the field. Also, this card cannot use this effect next turn. If this fusion summoned card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's effect, then you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn. The summon condition on this card isn't difficult because Fallen of Elbaz, there are plenty of cards that treat themselves like that, and actually not only can you use a fusion, a synchro, exceeds, or a link monster from your field, but you can actually use it from a superpolarization point of view from your opponent, so you can actually use your opponent's stuff against them. This is able to, just as a quick effect, send a fusion monster from your etch deck to the graveyard, so long as it mentions Fallen of Elbaz as material, to banish a monster on the field, so this can completely shut down your opponent's strategy. It can only activate once, and then you have to wait another turn before you can activate it again. But that's not really that big of a downside. You also have to consider that as soon as this card has left the field by any means, that you just wipe out all monsters your opponent controls, making it very difficult for them to recover. The Searing Dragon is a light attribute dragon type fusion effect monster, level 8 with 2500 attack and 3000 defense. It requires a dark monster and a Fallen of Elbaz. If this card is fusion summoned, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your etch deck except Lubellion the Searing Dragon by shuffling a fusion materials mentioned on it into the deck from your monsters on the field, graveyard, and or face-up banished cards. For the rest of this turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the etch deck except fusion monsters. You can only use this effect of Lubellion the Searing Dragon once per turn. Summoning of this card just needs a dark monster and a Fallen of Elbaz, really easy to do. Once this card is fusion summoned, you just, by discarding a card, can instantly fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster from the etch deck. accept itself by just taking the fusion materials mentioned on it and shuffling them back into the deck from either the field, graveyard, and or face-up banished cards, so you do have quite a few options there. This is restricted from attacking during the turn it activates that effect, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for fusion monsters, but that's not much of a downside. Sky Striker Ace Ray is a Dark Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 1500 attack and defense. As a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon one Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. When this card is in your graveyard, or if a face-up Sky Striker Ace link monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Sky Striker Ace Ray once per turn. This is going to be in an alternative art and is the main monster for the Sky Striker archetype. By just tributing this card, you can just instantly bring out a Sky Striker Ace monster from the extra deck, so long as it goes in the extra monster zone, and then those cards will have their own interactions and their own effects. Whilst this card is in the graveyard, if one of your Sky Striker Ace link monsters happens to leave the field because of any other reason, you're just able to revive this card. Sky Striker Ace Rose is a light attribute warrior type level 4 with 1500 attack and defense. If a Sky Striker Ace monster is normal or special summoned except Sky Striker Ace Rose, except during a damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If an opponent's monster in the extra monster zone is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of your card effect, while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon this card. Then you can negate the effects of one face-up monster your opponent controls until the end phase of this turn. You can only use each effect of Sky Striker Ace Rose once per turn. The summoning on this card isn't too difficult because so long as you've got a Sky Striker Ace that's normal special summoned, this card can be special summoned straight from the hand. It can also negate the effects of a monster that your opponent controls, and it can revive itself, just providing you with additional advantage. This will also be seen as an alternative art. And this is Dragon Master Magia. It's a light attribute dragon type fusion effect monster, level 12 with 5000 attack and 4000 defense. It requires a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon or 3 Blue Eyes monsters plus a Chaos or Blackluster Soldier ritual monster. It must be fusion summoned, and when your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only use this effect of Dragon Master Magia in response to each card type, monster, spell, or trap once per turn. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon one Blue Eyes monster or one Chaos or Blackluster Soldier ritual monster from your extra deck or graveyard. The summoning conditions on this card are not too tricky because there are quite a lot of cards that actually bring out both cards without too many limitations. A Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon these days is no gamble to go into. Alternatively, searching for either the 3 Blue Eyes is fine. Plenty of ritual cards to bring out either a Chaos or a Blackluster Soldier card. And this has the ability once per turn to shut each a monster, a spell, and a trap effect. This will make it quite difficult for your opponent to get rid of this card. And even if they do, this is when it leaves the field, you can just instantly recover a Blue Eyes, a Chaos, or Blackluster Soldier ritual monster from your extra deck or graveyard back onto the field. It's a legacy card, and it's meant to be very much supporting kind of the combining of Seto Kaiba and Yugi Moto's deck. You know, it's a bit like the Master Soldier, you've got that 5000 attack monster. It's just this is more so of an upgrade of it. I love this card. This has been shown as the quarter century rare, and it means it's going to be very difficult to get, and it's never had a reprinting. This is the first time it's introduced into the game, and for it to be this rarity, it's highly expensive, and it's been expected to be forecast at £500–600 each, which I just wouldn't be going for. Whatever you think of the set, I've got the entire list as is. As I say, I'll put these actually in timestamps so you can see the individual cards if you like. But otherwise, put your comments about the opinions of the set down below. Make sure to like the video, it really helps support the channel, and if you could subscribe, that would be even better. Thank you.